When it comes to materials for hiking boots, you've got two main options. You've got leather, which is the traditional or the classic, and then you have fabric boots or synthetic boots, which are a more modern alternative. But which one is better? So I've been a die-hard fan of leather boots like these ones for decades now. And I think these ones were pretty expensive. I paid about £220 for these. These are Altbergs. And they are a fantastic and premium leather boot. And leather offers you a lot of advantages over fabric. It's very durable. I've had these now well over 10 years, and they look, they're in pretty good condition. They also offer you a lot of protection. And we're talking about, abrasion and puncture wounds here as well. And ultimately, its protection is one of the main reasons why we wear footwear in the first place. Now, if you get a good pair of leather boots and you look after them, you treat them with wax, then, they're going to be very highly water resistant as well, to the point where you would call them waterproof. And one of the great things about leather that I really like is when it gets muddy, these are really easy to clean, because day to day, I can just run these under the tap. And when it does get, a little bit muddier, then I can just get some soapy water, a soft brush them off in there, and they come up nice and clean. But about 6 months ago, I decided to give these, which are walking boots from Clark's of all places, which isn't your typical kind of outdoor hiking boot supplier, I decided to give these a bit of a chance. And these cost me about £60 because they were sort of half price from the Clark's outlet. And I've actually been really pleasantly surprised because these fabric boots offer a lot of advantages. Now, the first advantage I noticed with the fabric boots was they're a lot lighter than my leather boots are. That actually makes quite a big difference when you're doing a long walk, because your legs are definitely less tired at the end of the day. The second big advantage is that they're a lot more breathable. I mean, a lot more breathable. And the advantages of that can't really be overstated enough. Because what happens is, as your feet get warm and they start to sweat, then the idea is your sock is meant to wick that away. But as the sock gets damper and damper, it increases the what's called a friction coefficient, and that can actually lead to increased blisters. And because the fabric boots are breathable, what happens is that sweat just evaporates into the air and it stops your socks getting too damp. And I found last summer, I was finding this a lot when I was doing some of the longer walks. My feet were getting hot, my socks were getting saturated, and I was having to stop and keep taking them off to let my socks dry out because I was getting hot spots. Well, that hasn't happened at all this year while I've been wearing the fabric boots. Now, the other thing about fabric boots is if you buy a pair that have a waterproof membrane, then they are going to be water resistant enough to be considered waterproof. But there's a key difference between the waterproofness of the fabric boots and the leather boots. And that is because the fabric boots rely on a membrane, once that membrane gets compromised, which can happen over time, and they start to leak, well then those boots are never going to be waterproof again. They'll always have that weakness where the water can ingress from. Now, if you've got leather boots and then they start to let in water, there's a good chance, you can just reproof them with oil and wax to restore them to their kind of full water repellency, because they work in a different way. So when I first started thinking about this, I thought it must come down to choosing between the kind of durability and the protection of a leather boot versus the kind of lightness and the breathability of a fabric boot. But then I thought about it and I realised that actually both types of boot have the same sort of synthetic sole, and that's going to wear out at the same rate regardless of what the upper's made out of. And there's no real advantage in having a leather upper that is, absolutely pristine when the soles are worn out, unless of course you're planning on resoling them. Now, when it comes to resoling your boots, you've got to ask yourself, is it actually worth that? And in some circumstances, it really can be. It can make a lot of financial sense, while in other cases, it just simply doesn't. Now, when I did the maths and the calculations, what I found was that for a kind of a premium pair of leather boots, you can quite often buy 2 pairs of premium pairs of fabric boots compared to the cost of 1 pair of premium leather boots, and then the cost of getting them resold on top of that as well. So it can definitely work out better for you financially, particularly if you're going to resole them multiple times. That's when it really does start to make financial sense. But there's no guarantee that your leather upper is going to be in good enough condition to be resold multiple times. And so to a certain extent, you kind of pay your money and you take your chances. So, which is better, leather or fabric? Well, I actually think that's the wrong question to ask. The question you should be asking is what sort of walking do you do and in what conditions? Because that's going to determine the best choice of material for you. Now, what I've learned over the last 6 months is while I have been I consider myself a bit of a boot snob, just a shoe snob in general, I always kind of invest in quality kind of footwear. I'm now a convert to the fabric boots. Now, I won't use them in every condition, but when the weather's warmer and it's drier and it's not too muddy, then I'm going to choose fabric boots because they're lighter, they're more breathable, and my feet are very comfortable in them. In the kind of, autumn and winter where it gets really wet and really muddy, then I don't think there's anything that's more reassuring than a freshly waxed pair of leather boots, and also the convenience of just being able to rinse them off under the tap when I get home to clean them as well. So I hope you found this useful. If it was, please do give it a like because it really does help the channel, and hopefully I'll see you next time.